I stood frozen in front of my computer screen, feeling as if the ground beneath me had just collapsed. The numbers danced before my eyes, but there was no way to make sense of what I was seeing. My retirement savings account was nearly empty, more than $350,000. The money my husband and I had saved for over 25 years was gone. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it echoing in the silent kitchen. I clicked on the transaction history, my eyes scanning each line. A series of withdrawals had taken place over the past 8 months, each one not large enough to raise immediate alarm, but together they added up to a staggering amount. The final and largest transfer, $200,000, had been made 2 weeks ago while I was visiting our daughter in Boston. The recipient's name? Lindsay Carter. I held my breath, searching my memory. The name was completely unfamiliar. Not a business associate of my husband, not a relative, not a friend of ours. A chill ran down my spine. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed Mark's number. The man I had been married to for nearly 30 years. The man I had trusted more than anyone else. As the phone rang, I told myself that this must be a mistake, a bank error, an investment he forgot to mention. But deep down I knew something was wrong. Mark didn't answer. I tried again, and again. On the 4th call he finally picked up, his voice filtering through the receiver, laced with background noise, voices, distant chatter. "What's going on, Emma?" Just a simple question, but I could hear the irritation in his tone. Mark was always like this whenever I asked about money. "Where are you?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "At work." I glanced at the clock on the wall, 8 p.m. Mark's company had never required him to work late. "Why is our retirement account down to just over $2,000? I cut straight to the point, refusing to give him a chance to dodge the question. A long silence followed, then a sharp exhale. "What?" "I just checked the account. More than $350,000 is missing. Where did the money go?" The background noise on his end faded. I heard a door close, as if Mark had stepped away to find a quieter place. "You're invading my privacy, Emma," he said, his voice dropping to a low, controlled anger. "Why are you checking our account without asking me first?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you trying to distract me?" I let out a bitter laugh, though nothing about this was funny. "This is our money, Mark. I have the right to know where it went." "You're unbelievable," Mark snapped, slamming something down, a glass maybe, onto a surface. "You're always so suspicious, so controlling. You're always convinced I'm hiding something." I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. "Don't turn this around on me," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "What did you do with our retirement savings?" Mark let out a mocking chuckle, a sound so dismissive it sent a fresh wave of anger and unease through me. "I earned that money, Emma. It's my hard work." Each word hit like a slap. "Your hard work?" I gripped the phone tighter, forcing my voice to stay even. "And what about me, Mark? I gave up my career. I spent over 25 years taking care of our family, raising our children, handling every part of our home while you climbed the corporate ladder. Do you think that meant nothing?" He scoffed as if my words held no weight. "Emma, if you can't trust me, then maybe we shouldn't be married anymore." I stood there, frozen. Mark had never mentioned divorce before. No matter how many arguments we had always worked through them. But now he was willing to throw away nearly 30 years of marriage just to avoid answering a simple question? "Are you serious?" I whispered. Mark let out a heavy sigh, the kind that spoke of exhaustion and annoyance, as if he had tolerated enough of me. "Maybe we both need some time apart." I heard the sound of a drawer sliding open, then the distinct rustling of clothes being shoved into a bag. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving for a few days," Mark said coolly. "When you calm down and apologize, I'll come back." I felt a chill run through me. Apologize? For asking about our savings? He didn't answer. I heard his footsteps moving toward the door, then his voice echoed one last time. "Don't try to contact me." The door slammed shut. I stood frozen in the kitchen, still holding my phone, my mind blank. Everything in my life, my marriage, my finances, my trust, had completely collapsed in less than 20 minutes. I sat motionless on the wooden chair by the dining table, my fingers still gripping my phone, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. Mark's words echoed relentlessly. crashing against me like waves on the shore. I earned that money, Emma. It's my hard work. If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be married anymore. When you calm down and apologize, I'll come back. Those words tore apart whatever fragments of trust I had left. But something hurt even more. Mark never denied taking the money. More than $350,000 didn't just vanish. Someone withdrew it. And if Mark wasn't alarmed or panicked about our entire retirement savings disappearing, there could only be one explanation. He was the one who took it. The numbness inside me slowly faded, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. I couldn't sit still. I opened my laptop, pulled up the bank transaction history again. Lindsay Carter. That unfamiliar name still sat next to the massive wire transfer from 2 weeks ago. Quickly, I opened a new tab and typed her name into Google. No significant results. I tried Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Nothing stood out. Or at least, no one matched what I was looking for. I frowned. A person who received $200,000 but had no digital footprint? Something wasn't right. I scrolled back through the transaction history, analyzing every detail carefully. The transfer was made on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. I had been in Boston, visiting my daughter at the time. Mark knew I wasn't home. A sudden thought struck me. I opened a new tab and checked our credit card statement for recent transactions. And that was the moment I knew there was no turning back. 2 days ago, Mark had purchased 2 first-class plane tickets to Miami. The flight was on Friday morning. Today was Sunday. A chill crept down my spine. Mark had told me he was working all weekend. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to take slow, steady breaths. Who was he there with? I opened Instagram and searched by location. Mark wasn't active on social media, but if he was traveling with someone, and if that person was arrogant enough, there was a good chance they had left a trail. I typed Miami Beach into the search bar. Hundreds of posts popped up. I scrolled quickly, scanning the images until one made me freeze. Mark. He was standing on the deck of a luxury yacht, his arm wrapped around a woman at least 20 years younger than me. Her golden blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, her slim figure draped in a flowing white maxi dress, her hand raised in a toast with a cocktail. And she had tagged herself in the photo. Lindsay Carter. A strange emptiness settled over me, as if I were no longer myself but merely an observer, watching the collapse of the marriage I had built for nearly 30 years. I clicked on her profile. A series of photos appeared. Mark and Lindsay sitting by the pool at a luxury resort. Mark grinning as Lindsay wrapped her arm around his shoulder at an upscale restaurant. Mark driving a convertible along the coastal highway. All of them posted within the last 2 days. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the caption under the newest photo, the one on the yacht. This trip was absolutely worth it. Living my best life. Thank you, my love. Thank you? Thank him for what? For the money Mark stole from our retirement fund? I felt my hands trembling, but not from fear. From rage. Lindsay Carter wasn't just some affair. She knew Mark was married. She knew he had a wife of nearly 30 years. And she wasn't hiding it. She was flaunting it. I suddenly realized Mark never intended to come back. The suitcase he took that night wasn't just for a few days away. He had been planning this for a long time. I looked back at the withdrawals from our account. The small transactions had started 8 months ago. 8 months ago, the same time Mark began working late more often. When business trips suddenly became more frequent. When he started tilting his phone screen away whenever I walked into the room. I had been lying to myself. I wanted to believe that our marriage couldn't fall apart overnight. That maybe this was just a rough patch. But the truth couldn't be ignored. Mark had been preparing to leave me for months. Only he wanted to leave with every last dollar we had saved. The fury inside me wasn't a burning fire. It was a sharp, cutting coldness, creeping into every part of me. What did Mark think I would do? Sit here and cry? Wait for him to come back and pretend none of this had happened? He had underestimated me. I tightened my grip on my phone, my eyes locked onto Lindsay Carter's photo. She liked showing off. Then I would give her a reason to regret it. I sat in front of my computer, the dim blue light reflecting off my face, filled with determination. This wasn't just a broken marriage. This was fraud. and I wasn't going to let Mark and Lindsay walk away from this so easily. I opened a blank document, beginning to log every suspicious transaction I had found. I combed through the account history again, trying to identify a pattern in the withdrawals. The small amounts had started 8 months ago, each one only a few $1,000s, not enough to immediately raise alarm. But in the last 3 months, Mark had started withdrawing larger sums, particularly the $200,000 that had been transferred into Lindsay Carter's account. I couldn't do this alone. I needed a lawyer. I opened my contacts and found the number for Lauren Mitchell, a divorce attorney specializing in high-asset cases and financial disputes. Lauren was a friend of a friend, known for handling some of the most complex divorce cases involving financial fraud. I hit call. Lauren Mitchell speaking, her voice came through, professional yet approachable. I need help, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. My name is Emma Parker. My husband emptied our retirement fund. There are clear signs that he's funneling money to his mistress, and I need to know what I can do to get back what's mine. Lauren was silent for a few seconds before responding. Do you have evidence? I have bank statements, transaction history, and even the social media posts from that woman. Everything clearly shows that Mark used our shared money to spend on her. Good. Come to my office tomorrow morning. We'll get started immediately. The next morning I walked into Lauren's law office. She was a woman in her early 40s, sharp and confident, with the kind of presence that made it clear she knew her worth. She skimmed through the documents I had brought, her dark eyes moving quickly over the numbers. He's been withdrawing money systematically, Lauren observed, tapping a finger on the statement. And the largest sum was transferred into Lindsay Carter's account. She looked up at me. Emma, this isn't just an affair, this is marital asset theft. We can take Mark to court and request an immediate asset freeze. My heart pounded. What exactly can we do? Lauren gave a cold, calculating smile. First, we'll file for divorce immediately, along with an emergency motion to freeze his accounts. This will prevent Mark from withdrawing any more money. I nodded without hesitation. Second, Lauren continued, I'll bring in a forensic financial expert to track down any hidden accounts Mark may have set up to conceal assets. A thought suddenly struck me. Mark is a senior accountant. He knows exactly how to hide money. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Then I'm certain he has secret accounts we haven't found yet. I clenched my fists. We have to get back everything he took from me. Lauren gave a small smile. That's exactly what I intend to do. A breakthrough. 2 days later, one of Lauren's financial experts, Daniel Carter, called me. Emma, I have important news. I held my breath. Mark didn't just transfer money to Lindsay Carter, he said. He also set up a shell company called Pine Hill Consulting LLC, registered in Wyoming. It's one of the most financially secretive states in the U.S. A chill ran down my spine. Mark had created a fake company to hide money. Daniel continued. He has transferred over $120,000 into this company over the last 4 months. And here's the most critical part. The receiving account is linked to a personal account under Lindsay Carter's name. I gripped my phone tighter, so furious that I had to take a deep breath to steady myself. Lauren's voice cut in. This is huge, Emma. It proves that Mark isn't just having an affair, he's deliberately hiding marital assets. This could get him into serious legal trouble. I let out a bitter laugh. Then let's use it. Lauren nodded. We'll file the motion in court immediately, requesting a full asset freeze and a forensic financial investigation. If the court finds evidence of fraud, the judge will award you the majority of the assets. For the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer the betrayed wife crying in the kitchen. I was fighting back for what was mine. The legal strike. 3 days later, the court officially froze Mark Parker's assets. Mark texted me immediately. Emma, what the hell are you doing? You can't freeze my money. I calmly replied. You can ask your lawyer, and don't call me again. Any further communication will go through mine. Mark didn't reply. I could easily imagine how furious he must be, realizing that I was no longer the easily manipulated woman he once controlled. I set my phone down, taking a deep breath. The game had changed. Mark might have thought he could walk away from this unscathed. But he had underestimated me. Late in the afternoon, I sat on the living room sofa, the cup of tea in my hands having long gone cold. The house was eerily quiet, as if it was holding its breath along with me, waiting for the storm to hit. And then, my phone rang. Mark. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Emma, his voice came through low and somewhat hesitant. I think, maybe I overreacted. I remained silent, waiting. I've had time to think, Mark continued. And I don't want to throw away 30 years of marriage over a few misunderstandings. I nearly laughed. Misunderstandings? I repeated, my voice calm but devoid of any softness. Yes, Mark said quickly, as if trying to steer the conversation back under his control. I'm not denying I made mistakes. I was stressed, I acted impulsively. But we can sit down and talk this through like adults. I think it's time for me to come home. Home? I glanced around the room. This house wasn't his home anymore. I took a slow, deep breath, then spoke with an eerie calmness. All right, Mark, come home. 3 hours later, I heard the sound of a car pulling up in the driveway. I stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. Mark stepped out of his car looking confident. He was wearing a crisp gray dress shirt, tailored slacks, and pulling a small suitcase behind him. He still thought he was in control. I turned away from the window and walked to the door, waiting. When it opened, Mark smiled, the same reassuring smile I had trusted for so many years. Hey, Emma, he said, as if nothing had ever happened. I didn't respond, simply stepped aside. Mark pulled his suitcase inside, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the woman sitting at the dining table, a thick stack of documents in front of her. Lauren. Mark froze. Who is this? Lauren stood up, holding a folder in her hands, and walked toward him. I'm Lauren Mitchell, Emma's attorney, she said, her voice sharp and professional, and this is your official divorce petition. Mark stood completely still. The room grew heavy with silence. I crossed my arms, my gaze locking onto his. You were right, Mark, it's time we handle this like adults. He clearly hadn't anticipated this. His eyes darkened as he looked down at the folder in Lauren's hands. What is this? Mark snapped. Lauren gave a small, knowing smile, one that held no warmth. It's your divorce papers, along with a court order freezing your assets. I watched as the vein in Mark's temple visibly pulsed. Emma, he gritted through his teeth, what the hell do you think you're doing? I tilted my head, meeting his furious gaze head on. Taking back what's mine. Mark threw the documents onto the table. This is a family matter, Emma. Why did you drag a lawyer into this? Why couldn't you just talk to me directly? I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. You emptied our retirement fund, Mark. You withdrew $350,000 and transferred it to Lindsay Carter. You've been planning to leave me for 8 months. You didn't just betray me, you tried to steal my entire life. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but Lauren didn't give him the chance. We also found the shell company you set up in Wyoming, she said, flipping to another page. Pine Hill Consulting, LLC? A hidden account used to funnel another $120,000. Do you want to explain that? Mark's face turned pale. For a brief moment, I saw panic flicker in his eyes, but within seconds he forced himself to regain composure, taking a deep breath before giving me a smug smirk. Emma, you don't understand, he shook his head. Everything I did had a purpose. It was an investment, an opportunity to grow our money. I clenched both hands into fists, rage threatening to consume me. An investment? I let out a sharp laugh. Then why didn't you tell me? Why was the money transferred to Lindsay's account? Why did you take her on a luxury vacation to Miami with it? Mark said nothing. At that moment, another voice came from the staircase. Dad, did you really do this? I turned around. My daughter Sophie stood at the top of the stairs, her eyes red and filled with disbelief. Behind her were Ethan and Noah, my 2 sons. They had heard everything. Mark's expression darkened. Kids, I can explain. No need, Sophie cut him off, her voice trembling with anger. You betrayed Mom. You drained our family's retirement savings for another woman. There's nothing to explain. Ethan nodded, his gaze unwavering as he stared straight at his father. We stand with Mom. Mark looked at each of his children as if struggling to comprehend what was happening. For the first time, I saw him completely powerless. Mark took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Listen, he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. I'm the one who provided for this family. I have a right. The court will decide your rights, Lauren interrupted, sliding the divorce petition toward him. Right now, I suggest you leave this house immediately. Mark's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with fury. You think you've won, Emma? He snarled. This isn't over. I stood tall, meeting his glare without flinching. This isn't a game, Mark. This is a consequence. 3 days after Mark left in disgrace, I sat in Lauren Mitchell's office, a thick folder of financial records spread out in front of me. On the desk, every detail of Mark's fraudulent scheme had been carefully compiled. Lauren slid a document toward me, her lips curling into a cold smirk. We found over $320,000 in Mark's hidden accounts. Most of it was transferred through the Wyoming Shell Company, then into a personal account under Lindsay Carter's name. I had been right all along. Can we get that money back? I asked. Lauren nodded firmly. The court has already issued a freeze on all related accounts. But there's something even more important. She opened her laptop, scrolling through a few files before turning the screen toward me. I stared at the screen. An entire thread of messages backed up from Lindsay Carter's account. Indisputable conversations between Mark and Lindsay, where they discussed their plan to withdraw money, disguise it as an investment, and even detailed how to ensure I wouldn't find out. My throat went dry. How did you get this? Lauren leaned back in her chair, her eyes sharp with satisfaction. Lindsay handed them over. I looked up, stunned. Huh. Lauren nodded. Once she realized she could face criminal charges for accepting stolen funds, Lindsay reached out to us through her attorney. She's willing to cooperate to protect herself. I let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. She betrayed Mark to save herself. Lauren shrugged. Loyalty disappears when the money runs out. I scrolled through the messages. Baby, it's done. That money is ours. Will disappear, she'll never know. Don't worry, I've planned everything. Emma might get suspicious, but she'll never find proof. I clenched my fists. He had underestimated me. Lauren shut the laptop, her expression razor-sharp. Emma, this is what we need to end this. With proof of financial fraud, the judge will rule in your favor. And Mark? She paused, the corner of her mouth curling slightly. We'll have nothing left to hold on to. 3 weeks later, I faced Mark across the legal conference room where our divorce settlement negotiations were about to take place. He looked far worse than the last time I had seen him. Dark circles under his eyes, his suit slightly unkempt. He knew he was backed into a corner. Mark's lawyer, a stiff-faced middle-aged man, placed a folder on the table, his tone controlled but tense. My client wants to negotiate. Lauren crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. We're not negotiating, we have evidence of financial fraud, a serious violation of marital property rights. Mark gritted his teeth. Emma, we don't have to turn this into a war. I stared directly at him. You started this war, Mark, I'm just finishing it. Lauren slid a stack of papers toward Mark's attorney. This file contains evidence of hidden accounts, unauthorized transactions, and messages between Mark and Lindsay Carter. With this documentation, we can take the case to criminal court. I saw a flicker of panic in Mark's eyes. Lauren continued, her voice cutting through the silence. But we're willing to settle this quietly if he agrees to our terms. Mark's lawyer flipped through the documents, his expression growing more serious with each page. He leaned toward Mark, whispering something. But I didn't care what they were saying. I only watched Mark. It took him a long time to look up. What do you want? He asked, his voice strained. Lauren didn't blink. Emma will receive the majority of the assets, including the house, the remaining savings, and 80% of the retirement fund. Mark will be responsible for repaying the stolen funds within 6 months. Mark tightened his jaw, but he couldn't argue. He knew that if this went to court, he could lose everything. His lawyer inhaled deeply. We need time to review. He has 24 hours, Lauren said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I looked at Mark. Think carefully, Mark. If you don't sign, I won't stop here. 24 hours later, Mark signed the divorce settlement. He lost almost everything. I stepped out of the law office, taking in a deep breath. A sense of freedom filled my chest. I was no longer the betrayed, deceived woman. I had taken back everything that was mine. And Mark finally understood one thing. The person he underestimated the most was the one he should have feared all along. 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of my new condo, gazing out at the vast expanse of Lake Michigan. Peace. It was a feeling I hadn't known in the final years of my marriage. I had won, not just legally, but in the way I had rebuilt my life. After the divorce, I recovered nearly all the money Mark had stolen. With undeniable proof of his financial fraud, the court forced him to repay the stolen retirement funds. The marital home was sold, and I kept the majority of the profit. With that money, I invested in my own future. Mark wasn't so lucky. After the scandal spread through the financial world, his reputation was ruined. The company he had worked for fired him immediately once news of his fraud surfaced. No reputable firm wanted to hire a man who had been caught hiding marital assets. He was forced to leave the city, relocating to Seattle, where he found a lower-paying job, nothing close to what he once had. And Lindsay Carter? She left him the moment she realized he could no longer afford her lifestyle. I still remember the moment Lauren told me that Lindsay had blocked Mark's number, erased every trace of their relationship from social media, and moved on as if nothing had ever happened. Maybe she had found another Mark. But none of that mattered to me anymore. I had my own path to follow. After the divorce, I decided to take back more than just my financial stability. I reclaimed the career I had given up nearly 30 years ago. I went back to law school. I spent every evening, every weekend, studying, preparing, pushing myself to finish the dream I had once set aside for marriage. And I did it. That spring, I graduated with a law degree, an achievement I never imagined possible at this stage in my life. Lauren's law firm, the very firm that had helped me take Mark down, offered me a position as a legal consultant specializing in high-asset divorce cases. They wanted me on their team because they believed no one understood the injustice of marriage better than I did. I accepted. This lakefront condo was one of the first gifts I gave myself. A space that belonged entirely to me. No more neglectful husband. No more exhausting memories. I lost a husband, but I reclaimed myself. At one point, I had feared that life after divorce would be lonely. But now I realized loneliness isn't what's frightening. Living with someone who doesn't respect you is. I don't need anyone else to make me happy. I create my own happiness. I took a sip of coffee, feeling its warmth spread through my hands. The game was over. And I was the one who won. Marriage is built on trust, but it is also a financial commitment. Emma's story is not just about betrayal in love. It is a powerful lesson on financial independence and self-empowerment. In reality, many people, especially women, find themselves trapped in unhappy marriages because they lack financial autonomy. Emma proved that losing a husband does not mean losing everything. She stood up, reclaimed what was rightfully hers, and rebuilt her life even stronger. This is not just a story of revenge, it is a story of rebirth. What do you think about Emma's journey? Do you relate to her strength? What would you do in her situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more compelling stories about family and life.